Good afternoon and welcome to the 181st episode of the Georgia Farm Bureau Georgia Prep Sports Drive for the GHSA State Title. At that time of the year has come. It is the state championships. They'll kick off on Thursday with the flag football. Then Class A Division I, Class A Division II will play. Then we'll have the next 2 days to look at. Also, today's guest is going to be Benedictine head coach Danny Britt. They are back in the state title. They will be facing off with Cedartown. And an interesting thing about that matchup, you have undefeated Cedartown, and then Benedictine actually has not lost to a Class 4A school since 2020. They went 13-2 last year, and then 13-2 potentially this year. Their loss was to Christopher Columbus of Florida, and then a close one to Ware County, who's also in the state championship. They'll be playing Warner Robins. But we have a lot to break down from the semifinals before we look ahead. And to help me do that is going to be Najeh Wilkins. Our game this past week was outstanding. It was the Gainesville-Roswell Class 6A game. Gainesville was able to come away with a 35-28 win. Really exciting performance by their offense. They have shown a lot of speed. And then Roswell just fought to the end, but they ended up coming up short. They were stopped on 4 consecutive plays inside the 10-yard line, and then Gainesville was able to hold on. So I want to get into that. We'll see if we have Najeh on. Okay, still waiting for him. I thought the biggest winner, though, or some of the most shocking results, Warner Robins, their big statement win over Cartersville. They really jumped out to a big lead. They're making their 6th straight trip to the finals. And then I just thought Mill Creek had an outstanding performance against Milton. They absolutely dominated, and that game was pretty much over by the first 13 minutes. All right, we're still waiting for Najeh. Yeah, remind me of that Braves playoff game a few years back when you turn it on and it's the second inning, they're already down 13 runs. You're like, okay, what I miss? I mean, we turned that Mill Creek Milton game on. It was 28-0 before most people even tuned in. All right, Najeh, so the first game I want to get into is the Mill Creek Milton one. I thought it was going to be way more competitive, but I was just so impressed with the way that Mill Creek offense looks when they really have things going. And I also just think they kind of caught Milton sleeping just with their ability to pass the ball early on to Mikael Wood.
Yeah, they were kind of known as kind of a predominantly run football team with Cam Robinson, but Mill Creek just kind of showed they can beat you in various ways. Obviously, they leaned on their passing attack. The RPO game was really good in that one. I thought Hayden Clark did a good job of reading the defense, knowing when to pull it, knowing when to kind of go for the short play and the short route, not kind of allowing any penalties with a legal man downfield or an eligible man downfield. So I thought that was big. He was hitting his man in stride. 3-star. Mikael Wood, Eastern Michigan commit, went off. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns in that game. First half, he had 2 touchdowns. First quarter, I think he had 2 touchdowns. And then Clark was just delivering the ball. And I think they just kind of blitzed him. And like I said, I think everybody was surprised because he had such a talented secondary. You know, a lot of 3 and 4, actually 4-star commits on that secondary for Milton. So, yeah, I was kind of shocked how they kind of put it on him. But then offensively, they just couldn't get it going. It seemed like the play calling wasn't the best. They got, game, which kind of, opens up their passing game. And, by a certain point, they were just too far behind. And you could tell they couldn't really get any traction besides the first drive where they had like 51 yards.
Yeah, it was just the way they started. I mean, they came out so hot. It was just hard for Milton to climb back into it. Another thing we were pointing out, though, before Hayden Clark left the game, Shane Throgmartin came in, the sophomore. He looked solid too, but thought Hayden Clark showed off his speed with that touchdown run he had and just was really accurate throwing the ball. So I think with him back in that, I mean, that offense really does work like a well-oiled machine. They can run it. They can pass it. I said on Friday, it's like they're running a college offense at the high school levels, the way I'd characterize it.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I got to talk to Clark earlier this year, and he told me they use a lot of analytics, and with the analytics, they if a team is looking at something on film or anything like that without giving too much away, obviously they get to know their tendency, so they'll try to do something different or switch it up. So I think that helps having that kind of the high school level, and you're just seeing how well they're playing defensively. They played really good in that game. They didn't allow that offense to get going. It's something I mentioned when they were kind of balling ever since that Buford loss, 39-27. Their defense had just stepped up big. I think that game only allowed 14 points by that time. It was garbage time. But their defense has been on the roll, too. I mean, offensively, they've been phenomenal, but defense, they're one of the most complete teams, you could say, probably in football in Georgia, in the state of Georgia.
Yep, they gave up a 50-yard run early, and then I think on Milton's next 10 plays, they only managed like 2 yards. So I think once they gave up that one, they really stepped up. You've been saying all year you felt like their defense was getting overlooked. Um, I thought their secondary looked outstanding. They were all over the Milton receivers who have just been getting it done game after game. So what do you just think of what Mill Creek's secondary is going to have to do to hold up against this really exciting Carrollton team?
Yeah, I mean they're gonna have to do a lot of the same they did in this game. Make them uncomfortable, press. Mix up some looks, disguise some looks, throw some different coverages out there. Obviously, predominantly in high school, it's cover three, cover four. So just finding ways, some beaters for the cover three or cover four. Disguising look real good defensively. I think a thing that stood out to me too was with Luke Nickel. They were bringing pressure. They was bringing down number 26, who was coming down kind of in the box. They were bringing pressure and making Luke Nickel uncomfortable. He was a sophomore quarterback. Obviously, he's pretty good. He has 3 Division I offers. He'll have more as the time passes. They have to do, to me, the same thing they did in the game against Luke Nickel. They got to do the same against Julian Lewis. Obviously, Julian Lewis, we know, is probably going to be one of the best prospects, in the state of Georgia. He already is, but, I mean, probably one of the best in the country, without a doubt, pretty soon. So, I mean, they got to just make him uncomfortable. They got to make him try to force him into some turnovers, and get him off his spot. Like a guy, some different looks, and force him to beat him. I mean, obviously, this is a big spot. I mean, he's here for a reason. I mean, freshman to be in the state championship says a lot about his talent and what he's able to do. But they got a lot of good playmakers. Caleb Odom went off last game. I think he had over 80-plus yards receiving. He's a big target. What are they going to do with him? How does he match up against their corners? Are they going to put Caleb Downs against him? That's a good matchup to look out for. And who's going to guard Bryce Hicks? Same thing. Will they kind of put Downs on him, or will they let Trajan Greco, who's been having a great season, kind of match up against him too? Those are some interesting things to look out for defensively.
Yeah, Greco certainly has. I think with Mill Creek, though, before we get into Carrollton, it's like on both sides of the ball, if you make one little mistake, they're going to make you pay. We even saw it when Milton tried to do an onside kick in that game later on. It was 35-7. The Mill Creek guy recovers it and then takes it to the house. I mean, that's just how they play. Mill Creek, they will take advantage of any opportunity you give them to make you pay. But Bryce Hicks, so I was trying to figure out on Friday if what I saw was correct, and it was. Bryce Hicks threw a jump pass touchdown in that game. So I said he's more than a Swiss Army knife. He does it all for Carrollton. But that's a pretty interesting thing to see them throw into the system, or throw into that offense. Bryce Hicks tossing a touchdown. I mean, how much focus do you put on him if you're Mill Creek in this next matchup, just seeing how much he's able to do?
Yeah, you're going to have to kind of key in on him a little bit. Try not to let him get going. Once he gets going, he's kind of hard to stop. He's one of those players. You can't just hit him once. You got to hit him multiple times, try to get him down to the ground. So, I mean, he can do a lot of things well. And as Joey King mentioned, he's their best player on their team, and we see why. But, yeah, at the same time, you want to kind of key in on them, but at the same time, you don't want to forget about their other weapons. They could beat you with Caleb Odom over the top, too. He's like 6'6", 210, big target. So, I think you got to just be kind of I don't want to say selective, but you got to be kind of intentional on what you're trying to do defensively. But I would say try your best not to let them get going.
Yeah, and so Julian Lewis, the freshman quarterback for Carrollton, who I think if they end up beating Mill Creek, that will go down as one of the most impressive seasons by a freshman quarterback in state history. His stock would go even higher. But he was 17 of 26 passing, 248 yards, 2 touchdowns. But you ask, how did Carrollton beat Colquitt County? Bryce Hicks took 37 carries in that game for 205 yards. So I know that was a tough sledding against that Colquitt County team, but what do you just think of the balance that Carrollton's showing, just that combo of Lewis and Hicks?
Yeah, you need that. You need that, especially at this time as it's starting to get really cold. So, in football, you got to be able to run the football. Let running kind of set your play action pass. But having that balance is the defense. They can't key in on, okay, hey, are we going to be light in the box? Are we only going to have, 4 or 5 in the box and play coverage, drop 8 in coverage? Or are we going to load the box with 8 or 9, and kind of play man to man on the outside. So it kind of leaves the defense in a bind when you have balance because you can't play one with the other. You have to kind of almost on your heels. You have to see what they give you. So I say having balance does a lot for Carrollton. It really helps them.
Yep, let's get into 6A. We were talking about our game, the Gainesville victory over Roswell. I thought that was really exciting. It was played at McEachern High School. Gainesville came out red hot. Darius Cannon, Roswell scored first, but then I thought Gainesville did respond and then was red hot early on. The Darius Cannon kickoff return, the touchdown reception. What'd you just think of Gainesville's just overall speed?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it on the tape. I mean, they have a lot of speed all over their team. I mean, Trey Reese, Trevion Watson, Darius Cannon. I mean, you don't want to kick the ball to him. You don't want to put the ball in his hands. I mean, for them to score right after they went down the opening drive for Roswell and him to get the ensuing kickoff and take it all the way to the house, I mean, it just says a lot, man. I mean, he's a great player. I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how the recruiting process is, but I mean, he's somebody you definitely want on your team. I mean, he gets in and out of breaks quick. He can catch 50-50 balls. He knows how to adjust to the ball. His other touchdown when he went up 21-7 was a great adjustment to the ball. Maybe a little underthrown, but he made a great adjustment and it made the defender pay. So, I mean, their speed is really good. I think that's going to help them in this upcoming game against Langston Hughes. I mean, it's going to be a good test. But, I mean, I thought that was a back-and-forth game. You got to credit Roswell, though. Be down 28-7 to come back and have a chance to tie it towards the end. Multiple chances throughout the game. Defense stepped up big in the second half. Only allowed 7 points. I mean, that's just a resilient bunch. I think what Chris Pruitt is doing over there is really good. And it's a phenomenal group. I mean, for them to do that says a lot.
Yeah, and what do you think of just the performance by Davenport for Roswell? Just what they looked like offensively with KJ Smith and just the type of balance they had.
Yeah, I think it was tough sledding. You have to kind of remind me, but I don't think he got going too much in that game like I would usually do. I know he had a rushing touchdown, but I think he was kind of tough sledded for Davenport all game for the most part. They really had to depend on their pass. KJ Smith was doing a great job extending plays. I thought he threw a couple strikes down the field in some really tight, close-knit windows. I think I did in the post, call the recruiters because he was just balling with some of the throws he was making on time, hitting them in the money, and the receivers were taking it all the way. Ethan Cricht had 2 touchdowns in that game. Chris Elko had a touchdown. So I thought KJ Smith did a good job. Sometimes they would bring pressure. He's able to elude the pressure, still keep his eyes downfield. He wasn't just trying to run it, every snap, every play. He was keeping his eyes downfield and delivering whole shots.
Yeah, you're right. So Ethan Cricht had 2 touchdown receptions. Chris Elko had another one. And then Davenport ended up scoring the only points of the fourth quarter. But, yeah, you're right. I thought maybe they were going to go to him at the end of the game when they had it near the goal line. But, as we said, they had it 4 plays inside the 10-yard line. Gainesville's defense held. But let's talk about their next matchup against Hughes. The way I see it, 2 years ago, Hughes falls to Buford, I think, in the quarterfinals. The next year, they make it to the state championship, fall to Buford, really close game. Buford's not there anymore. They've been dominating Class 6A all season long. I think they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. They're mad about those last 2 exits. Man, what do you expect to see in that game and just the type of focus we might get to see from Hughes now that they're exactly where they want to be?
I'm gonna be honest, man. I think Hughes gonna come out on fire. For their group, all those seniors they have, I don't think they're gonna play no games. No, there's no disrespect to Gainesville. They've had a phenomenal season, but I think Coach Boone is gonna have them ready to go, and I think they know what this means to them, how close they got last year. They've steamrolled their whole competition. I'm not saying this is going to be a blowout, but what I'm saying is I think don't be surprised they come out to an early lead, 14-0. I think Langston Hughes knows they can smell it. They want it. You've seen it all year. They've had some moments in there where they've struggled with some questionable hats, but he's rallied the troops, and I mean they got a great group of kids, man. I mean really talented. Prentice Aaron Nolan's been balling at the quarterback position. They got Jaquel Meadowbrooks, Robert Locke. They got so many weapons. I mean, they're kind of similar to Gainesville offensively. And I'm gonna be honest. I wouldn't be shocked if this was a little bit maybe of a kind of a back and forth shootout game, but I believe kind of more in the Langston Hughes defense in this one. But I think Nolan, I think Jaquel Meadowbrooks, I think Joe Dos, I think they're gonna have a good game. I think they're not playing no games. I think they want it, they sense it, and I think they're gonna come out on fire. Oh, shout
Yeah,
out to Joshua Hart too. Joshua Horton. I'm sorry. He actually decommitted. I don't know if you know. I sent this to you, Craig. Decommitted from UNC and is going to Miami. So that's a big news.
yeah, I saw that. It's going to be very interesting. That's kind of the sense I'm getting from it too. It's like Hughes had one goal this year. It's to win the state championship. I know
Literally.
Gainesville has been outstanding. Coach Niblett's going to have them fired up, but I just think as good as they've been this season, with that championship on the line, I think we're really going to see them play with a ton of energy and maybe even step up even more than they already have this year. I'm really excited about that one. Let's talk about 5A real quick, though. We had Warner Robins on the show on Friday. I was really impressed with the way they handled Cartersville, and then they're going to play Ware County. I think that would be a great matchup. But, man, what does it say about a team like Warner Robins to make it to their sixth straight state title after a 1-4 start, and how much confidence do you think they're playing with right now?
They're brewing with it. You could hear it in the post game with the head coach Marquise Westbrook. I mean, you could tell
Yeah,
they're
he was
brewing with it, and,
chilling.
and that just goes to show you he was chilling. You could tell. He was calm, cool, and collected. But I think too, man. Like sometimes I think we overblow kind of those sluggish starts, those 1-4s, those 1-5s, those 0-3s. Sometimes your team has to kind of get into it. You got to build the camaraderie, the cohesion. Offensive line has to gel. It's so many things that collectively as a football team you have to do in order for it to sustain success. And let's not forget, in our post game, he also said they lost so many starters. I think he said they lost 18 to 20 starters too. So you're getting all these group of new players starring in new roles, probably some sophomores in there, maybe a couple freshmen. I mean, that's tough. But for him to turn around, beat I thought a favorite in Creekside on the road spoke a lot to what they're trying to do, beating them in overtime. I think that was just huge. I think they're brewing with confidence. Obviously, can't sleep on Ware County. They're a great bunch and great group. They're here for a reason too. But I think Warner Robins is brewing with confidence right now.
Absolutely. And so that was a 3-3 game, I think, after the first, obviously trading the field goals, and then they just shifted the momentum, kind of blew the door open. They're up 20-3, and then cruised to the 35-10 win. I'm going to skip 4A for now, though. Talk about Cedar Grove, the way they're playing, what they've accomplished this season. And I mean, they'll have a rematch with Sandy Creek. Sandy Creek's also outstanding, but just the way Cedar Grove's defense has played all year, and especially in the playoffs, I'm just really impressed with what they're doing.
Yeah, Coach John Adams, he got them right, man. I mean, just produced two straight shutouts, one against a dominant team in Calvary Day, 31-0. For you to shut down kind of that four-star quarterback and that explosive offense, I mean, it just says a lot. I mean, he got them playing at the right time. It got nothing but studs all over the field. Evan Rusaw, Donald Green, Kay and Lee, Ohio State commit. I mean, Barry Jackson, I think, plays a little bit of corner out there for them too. So he got them playing good at the right time, and their run game is so good. I mean, EJ Colson, obviously, he's great at throwing the football, but then I think I seen on QB hit list, he might be a top 10 quarterback in this class too. So, I mean, to have that, and then you got running backs, you don't even have to depend on Colson to throw the football all the time. You got playmakers on the outside. You can depend on your running backs, Bowden Walker, DeMarcus Smith. I mean, you can depend on them. 3, 4 different dudes. You keeping them legs fresh with your offensive line. Just constantly.
All right, I think he cut out because we have Coach Britt coming on. I was going to ask Najee, though. I'll ask him off camera, but unfortunately, we won't get to see a Cedar Grove Hughes matchup this year. That would have been epic. But I wanted to see what his kind of what championship game he's going to be looking forward to most. But we'll find out that answer when we come back on later this week. And obviously, our game previews will be up at Score ATL. We'll also have the championship guide and program there for you at Center Park Stadium, formerly Georgia State Stadium, formerly Turner Field. So that will be exciting. We'll have our previews up, all the information, and obviously, yeah, Najee, what championship matchup do you feel like if you had to pick a game of the week, which one would you be looking at? Yeah. Okay. Swainsboro, Prince Ave. Interesting. He says Sandy Creek, Cedar Grove. But yeah, obviously every single one of these championship matchups will be must see action. But we're going to take one quick break before we bring on Coach Britt. Thank our sponsors, Georgia Farm Bureau.
Our mission has always been to support Georgia farmers. That's why we created Georgia Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, providing financial protection that farmers needed. While this remains the same today, we've grown to protect all Georgians through home, auto, and life insurance. From the very beginning and into the future, we stand for every Georgia community.
We are a Farm Bureau.
All right, welcome back. So our guest is going to be Benedictine head coach Danny Britt. They're coming off an outstanding win over Troop. They were up 35-0, closed that one out. It was at home. They've had such a great run this season. There were college coaches everywhere checking out what the cadets have to offer this year. They're back in the state title and just have had an outstanding run. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Coach Britt. We don't have him on yet. But I thought the big key in that one was obviously the defense having to basically spy Teo Todd the entire game. He's so dangerous with the ball. He's their leading rusher, leading passer. In my opinion, the fastest guy in the open field in Class 4A. And they really came out strong early. And then their quarterback, Luke Kromenhoek, he's an FSU commit, came out sharp, had 3 touchdown passes, including 2 to Zaquan Bryan. He is a Minnesota commit, and Minnesota was there in attendance. Their head coach, I forgot his name, but man, they've just playing so tough this season. I mentioned they have not lost to a Class 4A school since 2020, and then you have Cedartown on the other side, coming in undefeated. Okay, he's on. He just texted me. Okay. We're going to... Does he need to sign out and rejoin? Okay. Okay, so we should get him on shortly. But yeah, I'll go over their schedule. That Ware County game was really close. That was a winnable game. They actually beat Ware County last year. That was impressive. That really put them on the map, propelled them up in the rankings. And then this year it was a 14-10 loss, but as I said, it was really close. They also fell to Christopher Columbus. That's a Florida school, but they still had a really big performance running the ball that game, 257 yards. So talk about Luke at quarterback, his ability, but they've also been able to go to the ground, and they have a bunch of different playmakers. And then Zaquan Bryan, who I mentioned, had those 2 touchdown receptions this past game. He's also a stud defensively, so I want to see kind of where he's looking to play at the next level. Coach Britt, how's it going?
It's good, guys. I appreciate you having me. Sorry it took me a minute to get on.
No problem. Yeah, we were live on there, so I think we can't have 2 people calling at once, so that was not your fault, Coach. I wanted to talk.
Okay.
Wanted to start with Zaquan Bryan, your senior. Minnesota was there at the game to check him out in person. He's just done so many different things for you this season. The kick returns, catching the ball, running the ball, and then his defense. So talk a little bit about just what a guy like that has meant to the program over the years, how he stepped up this year, and then kind of where he's projecting at the next level.
Yeah, well, first of all, and this is what I said to Coach Fleck, who was at the game the other night, just before we even talk football, he's a special young man, Zaquan is. He's just really nice young man. He's been around the program since he was like 3rd or 4th grade. He went to St. James, one of our feeder schools, was cousin of John Wesley Kennedy, who was one of our special players for a long time, and he just is a special young man. But then as a player, as nice as he is off the field, he steps between the lines, and he's very, very competitive and very athletic, can do a number of things in passing game, the run game, return game. and is just a beast on defense. He's been playing free safety for us just because that's where we needed him to play for us to be the best we could be. But he's a corner at the next level and is committed to Minnesota and has been. He has been steadfast on that since he went up and visited and just fell in love with the place, fell in love with Coach Fleck and what he does, and the defensive back coach, Coach Haynes. And so he is excited and ready to go be a Gopher.
Yeah, so he's not going to be afraid if it gets a little chilly this week. He's going up to Minnesota to play.
Yeah, he better get ready.
Yeah, but I was impressed though. After the win, he was getting interviewed. He was talking just about how the team played well in all three phases, but then he was like, "Yeah, the game was a little too close, though." It's like I thought you guys dominated, but I was just impressed with just how well spoken, just what a team guy he was. And then he was talking about how it was emotional to be playing his last game at home. But I mean, what have you seen just from the other guys on your team? It looks like you have had just a ton of juniors stepping up offensively, defensively.
Yeah, we do. We lost a really, really good group of guys that had played a lot of football. A lot of those guys that were seniors that went on to play at the next level had been starters pretty much since they were sophomores. So, having to replace all of those guys has been hard this year. But in the same sense, we knew we had a good group to do it. And they, oddly enough, even though we're the defending state champion, the kids have been the last probably 6 weeks playing with a chip on their shoulder, feeling like they're the underdog a little bit. It's kind of it's exciting. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, well, you guys had a really tough draw, even as the number one seed with these teams you were matched up with in the playoffs. I mean, Whitewater, that was a really talented 4 seed. They're new to the classification. I thought Spalding had a great year. And then I want to ask you about the Stockbridge game because I thought they were a very dangerous team coming into Class 4A this year. What did you see from them, just the way you guys kind of started and then had to close that one out in the second half?
You're right on point with that too. Stockbridge, very, very talented, well-coached team. Gave us a lot of trouble. Defensively, we were good up front, and then in the back end, they just had a lot of guys that could run. And where you see that is on special teams. And I watch the coverage units, and that's where you can tell where you're at as a program is how many guys can really run. Stockbridge had a ton of those guys. And they were a very good team, and we came 14-14.5 with them, and we knew we were in a battle. And then, we were fortunate enough to be able to just kind of develop the run game and just be able to kind of close that one out and get a few field goals there to go ahead, and fortunate to win that one.
Yeah, it looks like Bryce Baker had a pretty good game against Stockbridge too. I think 11 carries, 64 yards, and then also had 3 tackles for loss defensively. And then Cody Brinson had the big pick 6 in that game. Just talk about the big plays they were able to spark.
Yeah, well, Bryce has been a player for us now. He's a junior, and most people think he's been around forever because he's, in essence, been a starter since his freshman year. And because of the success we've had, he and those other juniors that have played so much they've actually played an extra year and a half by this point because of all the games they get in the postseason. So, but Bryce primarily had been a defensive player for us all year. And we cross over, those guys, and he gets reps offensively, but, he's had to step up, and play offense for us as well. So, very tough kid, very smart young man, great leader. I'm pushing him next year, not that I get a vote, but to be the cadet colonel for our school next year, and just a very sharp young man. And Cody's been as consistent as a human being could be the past 3 years, and just playing and playing and playing. He's had a good year at cornerback for us.
Certainly, and then Asher Sigmund, he had the 2 field goals in that game. Defensively, though, there's some guys that I was looking at that are providing you a lot of size. I think it's Elijah Alexander, Cole Simeon, I forgot how to pronounce that one, and then Scroggins.
Yeah, well, you got the guys up front. Jeremiah Thomas, it all starts with him at nose, and he's a 5'11", 300-plus pound guy, strong as an ox, and just really, really has had a great year. The numbers may not show as much because he's a nose guard, but he's drawing double and triple teams, which that's why Wilkes and Jonathan Hardy, Wilkes Albert and Jonathan Hardy have those big numbers because they're being able to run the alley unblocked. And then Cole Simeon is a tremendous player. This is his third year as a starter for us, and he's a Division I guy that's really been a big-time factor for us. Elijah Alexander has had a great year this year, and a big kid with offers. And then you mentioned third, Scroggins. He actually wasn't starting at the beginning of the year, and we lost a senior, Lamont Mitchell, first play of the first game through an ACL tear, literally the first opening kickoff of the season. And he, third stepped up and has had a tremendous year. And third and he's that guy that Sam, what we call a Sam backer in our scheme. And, he'll be an outside backer, but will also play on the tight end when they have a tight end and that sort of thing.
Yeah, he's definitely been making a big impact these last few games. And then your sophomore standout offensively, Thomas Blackshear, he's able to have big games. Looks like you guys can rely on him as well. Talk about just what he's brought to the table as a return man and then just sparking big plays offensively.
Yeah, Thomas is an incredible player and an incredible athlete. And has had a great year for us. Truly one of the best athletes on the field every game. Unfortunately, he's been suspended by the school, so he hasn't been able to play the last couple of games. But always hoping and we can get him back.
Okay, got it. And then I thought your region this year, it was small last year, but I mean it got a lot better with Burke County coming in, Wayne County coming in, Island, Southeast Bullock, and New Hampstead are all seemingly on the rise as well. What were your impressions though about Region 3 this year and just kind of that step it took from last year to this year?
Yeah, well, definitely it got better. As much as I like Eric Parker and J-Bo Shaw, they're actually old friends of mine. I was not excited about them coming into the region, but they, very good teams, great coaching staffs, great programs. So it made it definitely tougher. And you look back across, and we played those games against them in the region, and we're both, ranked in the top 10 in the state at the time. So I like it though. I'm all about it. That's why we play Christopher Columbus and Bowles and Ware County is. We want to play the best competition we can. If we lose some games, we lose some games, but it makes you better, I can assure you.
Yeah, and I know last year you guys had some early losses as well and didn't bother you. None of them occurred in the classification. They obviously weren't region games either. So, the same sort of thing happened this year. You lose some tough games early on. What was kind of the team attitude after those? Like, how did they take those tight losses, especially the one to Ware County?
Yeah, I feel like it's two different things. We played Christopher Columbus, and when we went down, they're a much bigger school. It's another Catholic school, but they are literally 5 times the size of us. And I don't think, losing to them necessarily, was crushing to us or anything. Now, they beat us a little worse than we wanted to, so you can really use that. You can show and use that and grow from it. The loss to Ware County was very disappointing, although Ware, great team, and Coach Strickland, I was talking to him yesterday, actually going to call him when we're done here. A good friend of mine, great team, so not meaning anything against him, but we felt like we should have won it, and we just didn't play very well. Again, taking nothing from Ware, but it makes us better because when you lose games, you have to deal with the negatives. You have to deal with it. You can go out and play a team that's not any good, and you kind of gloss over the negative parts of it because in this false emotion. You're looking at things with rose-colored glasses. When you lose, I assure you, and nobody's looking at it with rose-colored glasses, it makes you better. It made us better. The team handled it well. We didn't beat up on them. You lose, but you go back and you say, hey, we've got to get better here. And what you also do is, especially this year, we were trying to find roster spots. I mean, the depth chart was ever changing, and there were some guys that, okay, they lost some spots there because they weren't as good enough, and other guys stepped up and made it happen.
Yeah, I think you could argue both teams got better from that game, Ware County and you guys. Um, but I want to ask you about this last matchup with Troop. I mean, when you were probably analyzing the film on Teo Todd, I don't know if there's a more just like elusive and dangerous playmaker than Teo Todd. So, I mean, how did you prepare for stopping him? What was kind of the defensive game plan for making sure you had an eye on him?
Yeah, well, first of all, yes, you do. You focus in on Teo, and he's a special athlete. And both, I mean, he can throw the ball. It's not just like he's, just a runner. He can spin it, and they did a good job with it, and you had receivers to throw it to. But we brought in a former player. I mentioned him earlier, John Wesley Kennedy, who's been helping us in the afternoon some of coming out kind of mentoring some of these kids around here and working out with them. And we brought him in, not in pads, but just, brought him in his shorts and cleats, and he ran. He was mimicking Teo Todd for us because that's as close as we could find. There was nobody on our team that could move quite like he could. So that was one way we did it. Schematically, it wasn't as much you could do other than just keying on him and having eyes on Todd all the time.
Yeah, he can certainly improvise, throw on the run, extend plays. So I know that was a really tough defensive challenge that you guys handled and came out to a really strong start. But then this next matchup, I think that's a whole different type of offense. You're going to be going up against Cedartown. They don't hide what they're going to do. They want to run the ball. And then I think the biggest thing going for Cedartown is just the fact that they're senior-led. I mean, these guys have been playing together since they were 5 years old. It's going to be a big matchup. But what have you seen just early on from Cedartown, and just talk about facing them for the first time?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're very right. This is going to be real football. I was saying on my radio show earlier, still, it drives me crazy by this time of the year. So many people are going back and showing their passing lead, their 7-on-7 clips. My geez, man, it's the furthest thing away from real football. You're going to see real football when you're playing Cedartown. They're going to get foot to foot. They're going to run wing T. They're going to come out. Those linemen have definitely been under the chute, I can assure you. It's kind of like when you're playing Analyst, right? You're going to, and we played Whitewater earlier, who was similar. So, they're going to run the ball. They're going to make you play real football. They're going to be physical on defense. And yes, you're right. They have a big senior class that expected to be here, that been dreaming about this. So they're going to be a very, very good football team. It's going to be a major challenge to be able to beat them.
Your comments on 7-on-7 reminded me when Boo Mitchell was on here, and he was just like, if you know you aren't going to get tackled, it's easy to catch the ball. Very true. Very true. There's definitely a difference in 7-on-7 and real football. What do you think, though? The big talk about Cedartown's also just their overall strength that they've been able to show on the field this year. So I know you guys have been working really hard to condition yourselves for another big run. How physical do you think this game's going to be, and what do you expect to see in the trenches?
Yeah, like I said, it's going to be very physical. They're going to come out low. They're going to fire out low hats, and we got to be prepared for that. Physically, just across the board, special teams, offense, defense, they're going to make you play physical football. I love it. That's the way it should be. Not.
Oh, looks like we lost
That's
Coach.
what it is.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry,
Coach, continue.
Sorry. And but anyway, it's going to be very physical, and we know that. We better prepare for it, and I think we are. I mean, I think we play that style of football as well. So hopefully it'll be a great match.
And then talk a little bit about your quarterback, Luke Kromenhoek, just what he's been able to do to lead you guys offensively, kind of step up in big moments when you need him to make the throws, and also just lead as a vocal leader.
Yeah, Luke is a special talent. First of all, I mean, he is unbelievable. Got a strong arm, 6'4", can really move, all of that. But first of all, what Luke is a competitor, and they love to follow him. The kids love to follow him because of that. They know he is a competitor. If you were going to have to go into a dark alley somewhere, you want to take Luke Romanov. He's just that type of dude. So that's what he is first. And then he has talent to beat you with his arm, beat you with his legs. He's a very good football player.
And then who are some guys we're going to get to see just out there on God, what day is it? It's Friday, right?
Friday, yeah.
Yeah. That are kind of just the program guys that they may not have the big stats, but just have gone out there, done exactly what they've needed to do, whatever they've been asked to do, just guys that you're excited to see them make it to this state championship game.
Yeah, I'm going to start with two that had a big night the other night. We lost Bryce to an injury, which we hope to have him back this week. But early in the first quarter, Rayshawn Matthews and Houston Jackson stepped up. Both of them juniors. Both of them, have been just consistently in the program, working hard, and they got the opportunity the other night in the semifinal game, and Rayshawn had 2 touchdowns, and Houston had 1, and just really stepped up and played well for us.
And then it's the last week of the season, obviously, back in the championship. What's the schedule looking like for you guys just heading into this kickoff?
Yeah, well, it really doesn't change any at all for us as far as how we practice, and it's the same as it's been since week 1 and how we do things. But we will leave. We'll get out of school early on Thursday, feed them in practice, and then we'll head up to Atlanta for Thursday night, so that we'll be there and can get up and go straight over to the Center Park Stadium for the state championship game Friday at 3:30.
Fantastic. Well, Coach, thank you so much for coming on. Congrats on making it back. It's going to be an outstanding football game. I've been impressed with 4A all season long. I think it got a lot better, and you guys are right back in the championship game per usual. So great job for your team. Congratulations, Coach.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep. All right. So there goes Coach Britt. We'll take one more quick break, and I'll be back to go down and look at some of these other state championship matchups. But first, we're going to thank our sponsor, Georgia Farm Bureau.
Our mission has always been to support Georgia farmers. That's why we created Georgia Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, providing financial protection that farmers needed. While this remains the same today, we've grown to protect all Georgians through home, auto, and life insurance. From the very beginning and into the future, we stand for every Georgia community.
We are a Farm Bureau.
All right, welcome back. So a couple of things that now I'm going to be looking at for the Benedictine Cedartown matchup. So the size they have on their defensive front, I think it's Jermaine Thomas. He said 5'11", 300-pound nose tackle. That will be so key in trying to stop that Cedartown rushing attack, just having that big body there. He said that's why they've been able to make so many tackles. I think Wilkes is their leading tackler. He's the linebacker. And then also third Scroggins, the sophomore who stepped in for the injured Mark Mitchell. He's had a ton of tackles too. So those linebackers are flying around. They've got a great secondary as well, with Zaquan Bryan coming in playing that safety role. He said he'll be playing corner at the next level. You also have Elijah Alexander. He's 6'4", 240. And then you have, I think he's 6'4". And then you have Cole Simeon, 6'3", 265. So they do have some size up there. But, yeah, that's what's going to be the key. Thomas at the nose tackle, Simeon at the defensive tackle role, and just freeing up space for those linebackers to come in and prevent Cedartown from running all over them. They'll look at what North Oconee was able to do last week. They held them to about 160 yards rushing. That's significantly down from, I think, what was like a 260, 280 yards per game average. But then Harlem Diamond was the key for them. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, had the bulk of the yardage, and then also had the touchdown reception. So Harlem Diamond will be the player to watch in that one from Cedartown. And then just as a team, I mean, they have so many different pieces that are going to come in and run the ball. But he did say Whitewater has a similar offense. That's very true. And then so does Wayne County. And they were able to win both those. And pretty significantly, 31-10 over Wayne County, 34-10 over Whitewater. So I think it will be one of the closest, one of the best hard-fought state championship matchups to watch this week. That one will be on Friday. But I'm going to go down to 2A real quick. Let's look at that matchup. So that's going to be Thompson against Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald is another defending champ that's going to be back in it. They join Benedictine and Cedar Grove as the defending champs that are back in the finals. Thompson's coming off a 20-14 win over Appling County. That was a team that beat them in the playoffs last season. They've had some really exciting playoff wins. They had the big shootout victory over South Atlanta, where there were 9 total touchdowns scored in the fourth quarter by both teams. They returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns in that fourth quarter, and were just trading punches with a South Atlanta team that I thought could have won the state title this year. They were absolutely loaded. Kewan Brown at the running back position. He was a AJC Super 11. It is Kewan Brown, right? Yeah. Want to make sure this is his last name. But yeah, so in this Thompson game, Jontavius Curry, once Appling County took the lead, it was 14-13 early in the fourth. He immediately answered with a 77-yard touchdown run. So really that's the second round in a row. It's like once the other team starts to get back or potentially takes a lead, they just have been able to answer with big plays. So that's going to be really important against Fitzgerald, whose defense has been lights out this offseason. They beat Fellowship Christian 19-9, and they scored all their points in the first half and then just clamped it down. Didn't allow the Paladins to get back in it. They were a team last year. I think you could probably argue that there's 3 teams that were in their position. 2 of them actually won state titles. And there were 4 teams that won state titles, Prince Avenue also. But I think with Prince Avenue, Fitzgerald, and then Hughes, they were super young last year. Obviously, Hughes didn't win it, but it's almost like they were playing with house money. They made it, but then they were going to be returning all their starters the next season. So it's like, okay, that year is really going to be the year. I think a similar situation has happened with Fitzgerald. They were really young last year. They had early losses, and then they were able to return on those guys, and they've just been so outstanding defensively. They were up 19-0 before Fellowship Christian was able to get on the board. And so I think that'll be a defensive game for Fitzgerald, and it's just going to be about stopping those big plays Thompson has been able to spark. Thought another game that Najee said he's really interested in looking into is going to be Prince Avenue Christian and then Swainsboro. Swainsboro had a dramatic 22-21 win over Irwin County. That is Coach, what's his name? Scott Roberts. He was playing up against his former school. Scott Roberts was an Irwin County grad, and Irwin County has made it to more state titles than any other program in the state over the last decade. So they were outstanding. They have Cody Soliday at quarterback, a coach's son. They were really competitive in this one, but Swainsboro was able to get a game-winning field goal at the buzzer. So Swainsboro actually had missed a PAT early in the game. They tried to go for 2 on the next one, and that ended up putting them up, I think, it was 19-14. Irwin County scored late. They're up 21-19, and then they're just able to march down the field after forcing a turnover on downs at their own 20 and setting up the game-winning field goal. So that just says a lot about their focus in that do-or-die situation. And then you always like to see the kicker kind of redeem himself. I don't know if it was a botched snap, but he was able to get the game-winning walk-off. And then DeMello Jones is the workhorse for Swainsboro. He's outstanding. He had 3 rushing touchdowns all in the first half. So he's going to be the player to watch. Swainsboro has an outstanding rushing attack. And then Prince Avenue, they are really led through the air with Aaron Philo. But we talked to Coach Vandergriff on Friday, and he was just talking about how tough it was to lose Bailey Stockton. He was their top receiver. He's also their top defensive back. He's their big return man, and he said it's pretty much taken 5 players to replace him. And we saw, Prince Avenue actually had to go to the ground more in this game than they might have with a Bailey Stockton. Aaron Philo had a rushing touchdown in that game. It was back and forth. And then Coach Vandergriff was also talking about just how big St. Francis was, I think, up front on their offensive line. He said they're the biggest team they played all year. So St. Francis was really good this year. They're dangerous. That was the first time they had ever made it to the semis. But the Wolverines are able to find a way. So I think they've had 2 games in the last rounds, a tough win over Metter, and then a tough win over St. Francis. But now that they're back in, I think they've seen what it's like to play without Bailey Stockton. They're going to make adjustments and watch the film and kind of come out with a really well-polished game plan against Swainsboro. Might even see them try to run the ball more. I think it's going to be a really close game. And Swainsboro, them beating Irwin County, that really says a lot. Irwin County was outstanding this season. Then in Class A Division II, we have Bowden. They're number 1 ranked. They're in the state championship for the first time since 2001. They had an impressive 45-28 win over Lincoln County. Let's see, who's the guy to watch right there? Robert McNeil, Will Rainwater, and
Hey, did you say that you sent me?
Dylan Akins. So Dylan Akins had 3 touchdowns for Bowden. Robert McNeil had 2 touchdowns and also had 2 interceptions. They're their biggest playmakers. They're both being highly recruited, and they came up really clutch. Robert McNeil, his final interception iced the game. So he just had an outstanding semifinal outing. And then they're going to take on Schley County. Schley County. Sorry, Jimmy. And they had another big victory, 35-6 over Johnson County. I think they were up 35-0 after the third quarter. How do you say this name? Kanazawa. Jay Kanazawa, their quarterback. He's leading all of Class A Division II in passing. He's got over 2,900 yards. So they're going to pass the ball. Bowden has its playmakers too. And then defensively, they have 26 team interceptions this year. So that will be a really nice matchup for sure. But then I guess I'll go over just my overall kind of impressions of these matchups. I really like Mill Creek. I said after the Walton game, I'm like, okay, this looks like a team that can win a state title this year. I love what Josh Lovelady has done there. They were the first team I saw that was using computer screens on the sideline and breaking down plays in live time. The kids are well coached. They have a great senior class. It's not just Caleb Downs. It's not just Jamal Anderson or the safeties. Their offensive and defensive lines have really played well, and I think they just are a team that shows up when they're needed, just in the big moments. Like, they know, okay, the other team might get yardage on us, but once they give up a first down or two, all they need is that one play defensively to get his stuff on first down, and then you really see the intensity step up, and they're also a great team on third down. They're going to be lined up in the right spot. They're extremely well coached. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for Carrollton, but the X factor in that game is obviously Bryce Hicks. If he is able to do what he's done with against some of these other teams, then he probably will go down as, until Julian Lewis kind of matures in his later varsity years, I think Bryce Hicks might go down as the best to ever do it at Carrollton. I think in the Cedar Grove Sandy Creek game, you're going to have to be a team that goes into this matchup with a four down mindset. I don't think there's a better defense on third down than Cedar Grove. The size they have up front, the secondary, the experience, the fact that they've shut out back-to-back opponents in two different styles too. It's like Calvary Day is a passing team, they shut them out. Oconee County is a rushing team, they shut them out. So they're good at both. They're good at forcing you into third and longs. I think Sandy Creek has to be aggressive. If they get the ball over the 50, it's 4 down territory time. If it's 3rd and 8, you're trying to pick up 6. You're trying to pick up 2 the next play. That is the only way. I may eat my words later if Sandy Creek comes out, but I just think that's what you got to do against this defense. Because offensively, Cedar Grove's talented too, but the strength of that team is their defense. You have to produce points. You have to put pressure on Cedar Grove's offense and not let them just run the ball with that stable of backs. So that's what I'll be looking for in that one. We'll obviously get into these matchups later a little deeper. The Hughes-Gainesville game, I said I think Hughes is just playing they've got that chip on their shoulder even though they have been ranked number 1 and have been blowing everyone out. They want that championship. I said I thought they were a state championship program last year. They basically just lost because they lined up for a late game-winning field goal and it ended up not going in. It was an interesting game too. I mean, Buford was loaded. It was foggy. They gave themselves a chance in it and then came up short. So I just think they're going to come out with such energy, such focus, and really try to make a statement. And it'll be interesting to see whether Mill Creek or Hughes gets an invite to the Geico National Bowl Series. That's the national championship. Collins Hill got an invite last year, ended up falling short in a back-and-forth shootout to a Washington team. But I think just the way Collins Hill played, the audience it drew, I think they're going to invite another Georgia school. It would be really nice to see Mill Creek and Hughes make it, but I think you might have to give it to Hughes since they are undefeated, and if they have another big win over an undefeated Gainesville team, that resume is going to look really good. Then in 5A, I'm interested in Warner Robins. If you look back at their playoff runs, like minus some of the regular season losses they might have had, they are just continuously beating teams by 20 points, 30 points in the playoffs. So they just have that championship mindset. They're going to give Ware County an outstanding game, but I will say this, Ware County, they just beat Dutchtown 31-7. Dutchtown is one of the teams that beat Warner Robins previously in the season. So I think Ware County is also playing its best football. I think it will be a really exciting game in 5A, but I do like Warner Robins in that one. But we've got a lot of work to do. I got to get ready for this state championship guide, so we will be back on Wednesday. But I want to thank Coach Britt for coming on. Can't wait for his game against Cedartown, and we'll be back on Wednesday.